Railfan Blues. Okay, so we're good. Ready to go? Tell me when you're ready. Ready to roll? Okay.
Kim Swati. I'm a depot manager, and I've been here 8 years.
I'll tell you what, Kim, that's her name this morning. We walked up, she had 2 cups of coffee in her hand. That was perfect.
There's Kim.
You don't know who Kim is, that's her.
Thank you, Kim.
How important are volunteers for Sumpter Valley Railroad?
Without volunteers, Sumpter Valley Railroad does not function. There's not a piece of it that is not done by volunteers, even the toilets. And to say that one piece is more important than the other's not, because it takes the full team or the full families to make it happen.
How many volunteers are there?
I'm not sure of the total number right now. I mean, this weekend alone, new volunteers. I think at one point there was 36 volunteers, and a lot of them were new ones. Those are active volunteers, because I believe there's like 400 that are members but not volunteers.
Where do they come from?
People come from miles. We have a gentleman, husband and wife, that come out of Wilsonville, I believe. We have a gentleman, one of our main engineers for 19, comes out of Goldendale, and I think he's a 6 or 7 hours. People sometimes bring their families in, which is awesome. You know, it really does become a family. We had a family that came from, I'm going to say Salem. They brought their boys, and they had played in the rocks and everything. While mom and dad, the mom helped me in the depot, and the dad worked on boilers. They come from everywhere, and there's a job pretty much for everybody.
I had that qualified for every position on the railroad, including cleaning the toilets.
Jim said since the 1970s he's been doing this?
Yeah, and he's done everything, and has until this year. He's been pushing on. He's been the operation manager, and he's been just the center of, I guess you would say, our family.
I made half again, and many of those things is what we got on the trains. Because people leave them hang down and they get lost.
Eric has been here over 40 years, and Eric works up here almost all the time as a hobby. He and Sam both have so much knowledge of everything, because it's not your average Joe that knows how to put a steam engine back together.
What is required to become a volunteer?
They have to do the work.
Release is you're holding a balloon and you let it go.
Each position does have to be signed off, and you have to prove your skills. You got to prove that you're safe. You got to prove that you're competent to keep people safe.
Keep your passengers happy, keep them informed, keep them safe.
Everything is done specifically through here.
There are certain things that you need during the trips, and there's paperwork that you need to fill out. So we are going to cover that.
They may come in from somewhere else with training, and it's wonderful because you know the language, but you go through the ranks like everybody to get there. There's testing that has to be done on hand signals, safety signals, the sounds of the whistles, what each one means.
Hopefully everyone knows this one. Grade crossing.
I know.
2 lugs, a short and a long.
Our hours of service regulations for us are the same as for the union too.
Pretty much, if you work on the train at all, anything you do then with the railroad during that becomes mixed in. But if you don't do anything with the train crew, then it doesn't count for hours of service. But you cannot go over 12 hours. There's serious fines.
Don't worry about me, I won't do that.
Good.
And you're each going to get one of these. This is our rules and regulations and all that fun stuff.
And we have a safety book that you have to have on you at all times for regulations, plus they use it for signaling to the engineer, because their communication is between the conductor, brakeman, and the engineer. So that orange booklet signifies and it stands out, and so the engineer will know whether they're going in between the train, if they're pulling brakes, if he needs to stop, or they need to emergency stop. I mean, everything is in that signal. And when you first start that test, it doesn't make sense unless you've been trained around trains. So it's a lot.
This is a dangerous activity. We do have fun, but treat it seriously.
When does training occur?
This was a kickoff. We try to do the safety weekend in the 1st of May so that we can get everybody trained and work together, and then that gives them the whole summer to get certified. We've taken them on mid-year before, and that works. It doesn't work as well because you don't have as much one-on-one training. It's just according kind of to what our situation is, and if we have somebody available to train.
My job as train master and as road foreman is to give you the best training experience you can have until we can let you fly and be free in every crew position that you want to do. And I am dedicated to you having a good time while you're doing it. While you're in your training program, I do track that very closely as far as how many runs you have, how well you're doing. I want you to have the best training and time on this railroad that we can give you. I'm all about everybody getting to realize whatever their dream is, hanging out with this fun motley crew family that we have. And I'm there to listen. Matt's there as your volunteer manager, there to listen. More than anything else, like I said, I want your training experience to be the best it can be and get you where you want to be as quickly as I can.
What are some volunteer duties?
It starts out as a brakeman. It's usually 6 to 7 round trips, and it is on skill. I mean, you can't just come up and do 6 or 7 and you're suddenly a brakeman. You're not just looking out for yourself, you have to consider the safety of each passenger. It's truly a huge responsibility.
This is an air release for the car. If for some reason the brakes are locked and the engineer dynamited the brakes trying to get them to release, and it doesn't work, you can always come over here and pull this, and hopefully it'll bleed the air off and it'll wake the triple valve up and tell it that come on, dude. Do your job.
You start out a brakeman, you work into the conductor. The conductor is in control of the train and in control of everybody, and they're making sure everybody's doing their jobs.
Coming back into McEwen, it'll again be when we're approaching McEwen. Please remain seated until the train is stopped, and we have told you it is safe to get up. As you may have heard earlier, when we do the runarounds at McEwen, the first thing you do is cut off the engine. So you don't want your passengers up walking around for that. Tell them to stay seated, and then again, passenger up, exit that side of the train.
After the conductor is a fire train, and sometimes that's before the conductor, because they also have to know the hand signals so that they can, communicate with the engine and where they are.
And have to maintain constant contact with the main train. Not as easy as it seems sometimes. Make sure that the fire authorities know where you are in order to access the fire.
Then you go on to firemen. So if you're on 3, it's pitching wood, which you gotta have muscles, and it's a big job. It's very hard, and it's very heavy. I mean, it's not just a piece of wood; it's a log of wood that goes in. On number 3, the placement of your wood is how successful the engine is in pulling the hill. On 19, it's an oil burner. So, and that's huge because it's the amount of oil, and it's just so much you have to know and be able to monitor, or you'll lose power, or your smoke will go black, which it makes really good photos, but it's not what you want. So from that, you go on to engineer. Everybody's goal is usually to get to be an engineer, and the engineer is not a 6 or 7 run job. It takes months. My son, it took years because, he was young, but he was able to do it all, but it took years to actually get his engineer certifications. I don't ever want anybody to be disappointed if it takes months to become an engineer, or years, because it's all about the safety, and it's all about our people and keeping them safe. When new volunteers come in, and they may come in as an engineer from another railroad, they still have to go through all the ranks. You have to start as a brakeman, conductor, fire train, fireman, because our signals are different, and it's a steam engine. It's just not something, it's not like we're just going out and driving a car or a pickup. I mean, each engine is different. And so you do have to go through the ranks. And I know that's disappointing to people sometimes, but it's also disappointing for somebody that's been here 10 years and has somebody blow by him and just throw him in the engine. So that's kind of just part of the railroad.
If a person is unable to meet the time commitment or uninterested in advanced positions, are there still volunteer opportunities available?
Everybody has a different passion. We have a gentleman that just wants to be a brakeman. We have a gentleman that just wants to be a conductor, and they both do fabulous jobs. Well, there's one gentleman that comes one time a year, and he isn't signed off because he hasn't got in. I mean, over 7 years, he has 7 runs, and we're thrilled to have him, but we have to have 7 consecutive runs, and sometimes it'll take 2 years.
Are there volunteer duties that don't require specialized training and testing?
You know, wood splitting is a big deal, you know, and everybody thinks it's not, you know, but it's a team thing that everybody gets in and splits wood. And if we don't have wood, we can't run steam.
The goal of the board that we have right now is to maintain our equipment for another 50 years. Whatever we do now, we want to last. We're coming up on our 50th. We're at 48 right now. And we are just now having to do major maintenance on most of our equipment.
Are grants a funding source for volunteer projects?
One of the ones that they're working on right now is a car shop and an extension, because our concert is out in the snow all winter long. So when spring rolls around, like right now, there's snow, there's mice, there's damage, needs painting. And so if that is put inside, it's going to really save a lot of work. It's going to keep, you know, the upkeep is going to be a lot easier. Coach 20 was the one that was in 2 pieces, and part of it was a chicken coop and part of it was a shed. Obviously, it's a beautiful, luxurious car now. The car shop that we keep Coach 20 in right now needs to be sealed, and so that's another one of the projects.
Where do volunteers stay while here?
There's 2 motels, there's Airbnb and a bed and breakfast. We do have a few accommodations in the yard at McEwen. It's not a lot because there just hasn't been the financing. So that's another huge funding issue that we have. The rest of us pull campers in, which is great, you know, if you can, but not everybody can swing it. And if you're not going to be here every weekend, you don't want to have your camper here. But it is hard when you don't have a place to stay. And one of the volunteers this weekend tried to sleep in his car, which is great, but it gets really cold up here. So I think early in the morning he went and got a hotel.
What else should volunteers consider?
Mosquitoes are serious, and bees are a serious issue.
Remember that we should have bee sting kits on both ends of the train. There's usually some in 1110 and some in whichever coach you've got on the train.
How does one begin the volunteer application process?
Give the railroad a call, and the calls will come to me, and then I forward them on to our volunteer coordinator.
How can one learn more about the Sumpter Valley Railroad?
It's sumptervalleyrailroad.org. Most of it is just personal information. It's there. The history is on the website. There's so many details that is involved in the training. You have to be here to really know the full story, the full responsibility, the full duties.
What are the rock piles along the tracks?
That's part of our history. That's the biggest thing. That's why we're here, is because it was gold mining, it was logging, you know, and I did have a lady say, you need to get rid of these rocks. And that is what Sumpter is. It's the history. That's how this happened. This is why we're here. And honestly, it's beautiful. I mean, when you think, oh, but it's really beautiful country. And the mountains on each side, and each one of those rocks have character, and they probably have a story behind them.
Station master, brakeman, anybody on the ground that's a crew member, even if you're not here as a crew member, if you're just here to do stuff, part of your job is going to be, as a volunteer, keeping everybody safe, right? Just more eyes is better than a lot of them.
And I probably should not click the pin over and over either.